Welcome to DJ TV.
Make una come here. Wetin this INEC National Commissioner talk concerning this past election.
Correct people, we greet una. Welcome una to DJ TV. Una WhatsApp channel. Where dey sama una with ogbonge updates, breaking news, updated updates. So I beg my people, if you never subscribe to our YouTube channel, make una rush now, make una go subscribe and also turn on that notification bell so that anytime we like say we drop any update like this, una go dey notified. Banga! Our Facebook page, my people, make una follow us and make una dey like. Una do well. Anyway, my people, make we quickly run enter the tori and update we will carry come for una like this.
This INEC commissioner been a national commissioner they call Festus Okoye. When we follow Mahmoud run off street, don't come out again for national television this time. Come they defend INEC or for all what they do Nigerians for this past election where they promise they go dey transparent. This man not fear at all. He just come out now, come national TV arise for that matter. Don't begin to talk, they defend their neck. My people, I don't want to talk too much. Make I play on the video and make una watch and hear what this man talk. Make una watch.
You know, the commission invited over 33 international organizations to observe this election. And then we also accredited over 163 domestic election observers. Now, when we invited the European Union and other international groups and organizations, we did not give them a template and we did not give them a marking scheme. We invited them to come and observe our elections, and we never asked them to give us a pass mark. We asked them to observe and then report on the observations, and if they make recommendations, that we are going to look into their recommendations, and if there are some that are actionable with administrative flavor, that we are going to implement them. So the report was formally presented to the chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, who commended the EU for coming to observe our elections and for having been consistent in observing our elections. So that was our initial reaction, that we invited them, we asked them to come and observe, and we have nothing to hide. And they have observed, they have presented their report to us, and we are looking at their report.
Well, as you look at that report, let me jump in there. There's a conditionality clause there. You just said that if some are actionable.
Yes.
You want to expatiate on that?
Well, if you look at the recommendations they made 23 recommendations. 6 of those recommendations were specifically directed at the Independent National Electoral Commission. 7 were directed to the Commission and to the other agencies involved in the election, and then the rest were directed to the security agencies, the political parties, and so on. Now, within the remit of the Commission, there are some of the recommendations that have administrative flavor, which we can implement without recourse to the National Assembly or recourse to the executive or recourse to other agencies. Those ones we are going to look at them. There are also some of the recommendations that have both legal and constitutional implication. Those ones we are going to work with the National Assembly and also work with other agencies of government to see whether those ones are implementable. And if they're implementable and if they fall within the remit of the Commission and within the socio-economic dynamics of the country, definitely we will push forward with them.
I know definitely you will need to meet to know what are implementable, but again, the 6 you spoke about, if you don't mind, can we enumerate some of those 6 that are directed at INEC?
Well, one of those recommendations has to do with persons living with disability and internally displaced persons. Now, during the voters registration exercise, the Commission worked closely with the various organizations of persons living with disability to harvest data on where these persons are and the type of disability they have. So based on that, the Commission made sure that we procured magnifying glasses for those who have sight impairment. We also designed braille ballot guide for those who are blind and so on. But it is not enough because we still need to gather that additional data, especially data relating to those who registered before we carried out the continuous voters registration exercise. So that's one of the issues they raised. The second issue relates to internally displaced persons. And you know that if you look at the report, they talked about the pre-election environment being volatile and challenging. And because of the fluidity of the security situation in different parts of the country, those who are internally displaced were coming in to the internally displaced camps and going out. So that made it slightly difficult to capture all of them during the voting process. But for those who we could capture, who were in the camps of internally displaced persons, we made arrangements for them. We recreated their polling units and their registration areas, and we got them to vote.
In the camp?
In the camp. But those who were staying with relatives and who were staying with friends, or who moved from one local government to the other, or from one state to the other, there was no way we could factor them into the matrix for the voting process. So that's part of the issues we're also going to look at going forward.
And you know, I want to go back. Let's backtrack and talk about those with that are visually impaired.
Yes.
How did you get them to identify if the ballot paper brailled?
Yes, it's called Braille Ballot Guide. You slot in the
Braille
ballot guide. You slot in the ballot paper into a Braille jacket, and they use that to identify the political party they want to vote for. That Braille Ballot Guide was designed in conjunction with the different organizations of persons living with disability.
And these were used in this last election?
Definitely, yes.
Okay, now let's come back to the others. Now we already have two, PLWD and the internally displaced. You just want to let us in on the other four?
Well, there was also the issue of the training of ad hoc staff. They talked about the training of ad hoc staff and the fact that the training was not adequate and that some of the classes were overcrowded. Now, the truth of the matter is that for the 2023 general election, the commission deployed over 1.5 million ad hoc staff because we created additional polling units. And for the 2023 general election, we deployed to 176,606 polling units. And in each polling unit, we deployed both the presiding officer and assistant presiding officer 1, 2, and 3. We also deployed the supervisory presiding officers, and we had to train all these people. But the challenge is that in trying to train some of them, there was also security challenges in some local governments and also in some registration areas. And so in some of the places where you had security challenges, we had to cluster the training venues. And some of them were overcrowded. So we are going to look into that and see in what ways we can decentralize the training of poll workers and also design mechanisms of online training so that you don't need to cluster everybody around the classroom in order to train them. They also talked about some of the ad hoc staff not seeing the beavers before the election.
And this one falls back to the last one, training of ad hoc staff.
Exactly. So they talked about that one and some other peripheral issues that we are going to look into.
You know, you were very much there sensitizing Nigerians before the polls and during the polls. And one wonders, once this report is out, why the Commission and yourself specifically will call this an unfair assessment. Because in the words of INEC, INEC says the final report on the overall performance is unfair.
I was the one that spoke, and I spoke yesterday. The question I was asked was not specifically on the EU report. I was asked to assess the conduct of the election, and I made the point that in assessing the conduct of an election, you have to look at the pre-election environment and the pre-election issues. You have to look at election day issues and also post-election day issues. And I said that in terms of pre-election matters, you can see that we registered new voters and we increased the docket of Nigerians who are registered. We also introduced electronic accreditation of journalists, electronic accreditation of domestic observers, and also online nomination. We opened an online nomination portal for political parties. I said all these things must be factored in. but that in terms of the election itself, people did not complain about the beavers as an accreditation device. In fact, in all the reports I have read, they said that in terms of accreditation, that the beavers performed optimally. In terms of upload of senatorial election results and House of Representative election results, in terms of the conduct of the governorship election results and the conduct of the state assembly results, that there were substantial and marked improvement in the performance of the commission. Now, the point I was making is that the issue that has been dominant revolves around the challenges the commission had with the upload of the presidential election results. And I said that it is unfair and it is not right to assess and evaluate the conduct of the entire 2023 general elections only on the basis of the glitch we suffered in terms of the upload of the presidential election result. And that was the point I was making.
But again, you
hey my people, and the update will carry come from like this with this. So now here waiting this smart talk Chief Dan last see concerning this so gbege wey dey happen between the Igbos and the other regions for Naija. Anyway, my people can drop na comment and have visit so sorry. And make una no forget to like and share. Now do well. See you in our next video.
I agree. I agree that it's an issue, and we explain to Nigerians what the issues were. I may not be in a position to comment extensively on the issue because it's a subject of a judicial process. So when the entire judicial process comes to a finality, we will be in a position to explain that. But at the level of the commission, starting from the 4th of July, we are going to begin our own internal and external review of the conduct of the election, and we are going to begin with interaction and interface with our resident electoral commission.
I was actually going to get there.
Yes.
Sorry to cut you,
Yes.
because first, why the delay? Because some had thought that before now yours would have been out even before that of EU.
Well, if the reports from the commission comes up before the reports of domestic and international election observers, there won't be any need to also engage the external actors in the process. And we also had to wait a little bit to make sure that the judicial process is firmed up, so that nobody will accuse the commission of interfering in the judicial process. But the judicial process has gone almost the whole hog. So I think this is the right time for us to begin our own internal and external evaluation of the election. Moreover, we have 3 governorship elections in November. So we need to understand the things we did right with the 2023 general election, the things that we did not do right, where we failed completely, and then we begin to look for mechanisms on how to consolidate on the progress and the successes we recorded, how to ameliorate some of the challenges, and then if there are obvious failures, how to jettison those failures, and then bring in a template on how to conduct and manage good elections.
Mr. Okoye, you're in charge of Information and Voter Education Committee, and I must say you've done well, because you go around and you speak to everyone, media-wise. But again, how much of that have you done with your ad hoc staff, knowing full well that this is one sore point raised by the EU as well as some other observer groups?
The entire workforce with the Independent National Electoral Commission revolves around between 14 and 15,000. But for the conduct of any election, and as I pointed out, for the 2023 general election, we deployed over 1.5 million ad hoc staff. Now, at the level of the polling unit, the presiding officer or the presiding officers are mostly young men and women doing their national youth service, while the assistant presiding officer 1, 2, and 3 are mostly students of federal tertiary institutions in their penultimate year. And so what we have been doing and what we'll continue to do is to train some of these ad hoc staff, especially in their institutions and where they are. And so we are developing a new template and new mechanisms of online training for some of these ad hoc staff. Moreover, you will agree with me that the Electoral Act 2022 came into force, and there were fundamental and new provisions in that particular act that necessitated our redesigning our regulations and guidelines, and also manual for the training of ad hoc staff. So some of them who were trained before using the old manual did not pay attention in the new manual, thinking that it was just the same thing, only for them to find out that there were fundamental changes. So we are going to recalibrate our template and recalibrate our training processes and procedures, and we are going to get things right.
Hey my people, now wow, this man he don't drag our father like this, so for all wetin talk like this for on top national TV. Anyway, my people, the update will carry on like this for now be this, so I na reason and see, and make una drop una comment for the comment section, and make una don't forget to like and share. Now do well. See you in our next video. DJ